Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the final part of this hands-on with Maxon character creation workshop. My name's Ellie, I'm a trainer at Maxon, and I'm joined for the last time this month, but hopefully not the last time forever, with Mr. Joe Herman. How's it going, Joe?
Good, thanks. Hi, Ellie. Nice to see you again. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the last
The last.
class in this particular, series.
Yeah,
And nice to see everybody. I don't know. I see Jim, Byrne, Marcelo, Berlin. Uh, I don't know if we have Mauritius back in the house. That was kind of maybe the most exotic place we've seen in
that
this
was,
round.
yes.
But
And
I
yeah, we've
know
also
that
got Miles, we've got Trish, Duarez, Rune, Drake, Hannah. Hey everyone, it's
hey,
good to see
Hannah.
some regular faces.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And some
last
gold
lesson. Yes,
starfish. Yeah.
yeah, of course. So, really quickly, just in case this is the first time you're joining us, hi, welcome. The idea behind this workshop was to help you learn to design and rig a character ready for animation in just as little as 6 weeks. And this was a little bit of the overview. So this was broken down into 6 different parts, and Joe has been going through all this amazing content and information over the last 6 weeks. So we can see we went from sculpting a cartoon character in ZBrush. We then brought that into Cinema 4D, prepared it, converted it for animation. We unwrapped and textured the model. We dove into like UVing and Redshift. We looked at hair. We looked at rigging the body. And then today we're looking at rigging the face. And so don't worry if you missed any of these sessions and you think, hey, I really wish I could dive into that kind of information, then all of these sessions, actually all of the sessions we do with the Maxon training team, get recorded and they get uploaded onto the Maxon training team YouTube channel, which is this page here. So what we have to do, go onto YouTube, search Maxon Training Team, and you can find everything on there that is also timestamped thanks to the amazing Dr. Sassy. Really quickly,
Yep.
before we dive in and before I hand it over to Joe, some sort of extra stuff that we've got for this workshop. Again, all sessions are recorded, put on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. Included are also all the project files and assets. So Joe's been kind enough to be putting these on a Dropbox file for everyone to access. Also, we have been extending trial licenses. Those will expire at the end of this month. We thought we'd be nice and generous and not have them expire this week, even though it's the final week. We're giving you an extra sort of 2 to 3 weeks on those. So they'll be the end of Feb. Any ones who haven't been done yet, I know there are a couple still in the training team inbox. I will get those done for you tomorrow. Yeah, so feel free to email us training@maxon.net with the title #HowMaxon. Just make sure you activate your trial, then let me know, and I can do that for you. Again, we're really keen to see your work, whether it's to do with this workshop or just anything to do with Maxon or Cinema 4D or Redshift in general. And we have a very special hashtag, which is #HowMaxon. And both myself and Joe and all the team keep an eye on that across the socials, whether it's TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all the fun stuff. Also, feel free to add both myself and Joe on socials. We've got @Joe Herman Artist on Twitter and Instagram, and I am @ItWasElly. Also, Joe has been doing a lot of YouTube videos that we've been sharing throughout this as well, including stuff like hair, and he's doing more of those in the coming weeks. So check him out on YouTube as well. Again, all this information should be found in the handout section of GoToWebinar, including a link to a free t-shirt. So I normally do this at the end, but I'm going to do it now just to say thank you to you all for being part of this amazing workshop. Those of you who have been in our sessions before already know about this. Basically, we have a super secret merch link and a code that gets you a free t-shirt. All you have to do is pay for shipping, which will vary depending on where you live. So you should be able to find that in the handout section of GoToWebinar. If you can't, just let me know in the questions area inside of GoToWebinar, and I will be able to give you that link and that code as well.
That's cool. You get a
So
little t-shirt. That's a nice thing to have.
yes, rep the Maxon merch just like we do. However, I'm not doing it today because I'm in a jumper because it is a bit cold in England today. So sorry, everyone. So final part 6, where we're going to be diving into a bit more about rigging, in particular rigging the face. So Joe, what are we doing today?
Good question. So, thanks for all of your nice comments, by the way. And welcome to the final and last chapter of this character workflow series. Just to recap a little bit, is we spoke about, we started out by just, it all starts out with a concept, usually a 2D sketch. And if you're a good artist, you can make a lot more of that 2D sketch than just a scribbling. But it usually helps to start with drawing at first. You do color sketches as well, and all kinds of, for those of you who are interested in the art of animation, you can look at, in sort of like the classic animated films or the Pixar films, you'll see that a lot of time is spent in drawing developmental art, just 2D art, just letting your imagination go free, because in reality, there's no quicker way to get your ideas from here out to here than just picking up a pencil or a paintbrush or a stylus, really, in this case, and just start drawing. The next step would be to start blocking out the character in ZBrush, which, as we spoke about at length in the beginning of the course, is the easiest way for you to imagine your character in 3 dimensions without having to worry about topology. But then at some point, you're going to have to say, okay, I know what my character is going to look like. I've sketched, I've sculpted this maquette, and now I've got to think about topology. So then the next thing involved is that you have to create the proper topology and edge flow for your character in order for it to be able to be animated. And the step after that becomes we started with UV unwrapping and texturing the model and painting textures and adding textures and using Redshift to set up our materials, so that way our model will be able to be just not white plastic. And then and then you can make gold, and you can make leather, and you can make denim and wool and all kinds of materials like that. And then and then you can add hair to your model, to give it a little hair. And then the next step after adding hair comes rigging the skeleton. And last time, if you recall, we used the Mixamo control rig, which is a nice rig actually to do. But there's also the advanced biped character rig, which is an excellent rig, especially if you're not planning to use a lot of motion capture. But we actually applied some motion capture in Maxon's built-in motion capture library onto our character by using something called the character definition tag and the motion solver. And then, so now we've come to the point where after all's that, then we need to start rigging the face, which is probably the last step that you would do before you actually start animating the character. And what do you get out of face rig? Well, you get a few important things. You get the ability to, to do certain things like blink, making the character blink, moving the eyebrows around, smiling, facial expressions, okay? Different facial expressions. And the other thing that a face rig will allow you to do is allow you to create what are called the phonemes, okay? So the phonemes are the different mouth positions that you would use when you're doing lip sync, okay? So for example, you make a phenome for O and oo and E and ah and and actually it happens to be that you might say, well, gee, wouldn't that be a lot of phonemes to make? Because there's 26 languages, 26 letters in the alphabet, and almost unlimited amount of sounds you could make for with your mouth. But in reality, you only have to make about 5 or 6 phonemes. Like M, B, and P are all the same. They're just like, you know, so whether you do that, and then E and S is usually kind of the same thing. And and E and A are very similar. So you don't have to make that many. You know, you do have to make F because that's kind of its own thing. But so, and the other things is that you can sort of like half of an A is kind of like an L if you move the tongue up. So, you know, you can just get by with making 5 or 6 of these phonemes and you'll be fine. So we're going to try to understand now. I'll tell you one thing is that face rigging is a huge topic, and probably could have its own, you know, series just on face rigging. But the thing is that, but we're going to understand the concepts behind it today. And one thing that I will say about face rigging is that there's a lot of ways to do it. And depending on who you're talking to, and depending on how your character is, you know, because, you know, your character might be like a cutout piece of paper, like the guys at Pop Paper City are doing with their show, you know, or it might be, you know, a dinosaur, or it could be, you know, a humanoid face or whatever. So there's just really like unlimited types of face rigs you can make. So unlike, you know, like let's say, you know, skeletal rigging, it varies, but it doesn't vary that much as facial rigging does. And there's different styles. So the thing that I would just say before we get started is one thing. There's actually a kind of feeling that a lot of people have that somebody has the answer, somebody's able to do it better than you are, okay? And so what happens is you start watching tutorials and then everybody's doing it different, first of all. And the fact of the matter is that somebody might not be able to do it better than you are because you might come along with a fresh idea on how to do it and say, hey, why don't I try this? And all of a sudden it's better than anybody's ever done in the history of computer graphics. So the thing is that you can, you know, you shouldn't end the invention of making something like a face rig where there's a lot of creativity involved and thinking that there's one way to do it. That's the whole point of this little discussion here. So with that said, we're gonna get started. So I guess, is there any questions on that so far? How are we doing?
I've just handed the screen over to you. Not anything on that. Jim says
Okay.
yay for phenomes. But we did have a quick question from Joseph, which is slightly on topic, but not necessarily what we were talking about. He's wondering, can blend shapes from ZBrush be used in C4D?
That's a very good question, actually. I know that people use the sculpting tools in Cinema 4D, the built-in sculpting tools in Cinema 4D to create blend shapes. But as far as bringing them over from ZBrush, it's not quite the same as you do in Maya, where you set up separate, you know, heads. It's all done on the same heads. So I'd have to get back to you on that. The thing is that I haven't brought blend shapes from ZBrush in as, you know, blend shapes. I'm not saying that it's impossible to do, but you'll see how to do, because we're going to start out, actually, this is kind of a good segue into our discussion. So I guess the thing is that I'm going to open up our little blackboard here. Oh, and I never made my screen 1920 by 1080. I forgot to do that, but I don't know. Maybe we can do it like this for now and see what happens. Can you see this all right, Elly? If I start writing?
Yes, that looks good for me.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about face rigging on our good old blackboard. Now, when you do face rigging, facial rigging, or face rigging, you have two two paths you can go on, Bon, okay? And the two paths you can choose is you can do what's known in Cinema 4D as PoseMorphs, or as Joseph has explained, or as Joseph has brought up, is a thing called blend shapes. Now, blend shapes really comes from another software package, 3D animation software package. But in Cinema 4D, they're known as PoseMorphs, but they're sort of the same thing, although they're handled differently. Okay. In Maya, I believe you have to make a separate, head for every blend shape with the points arranged in the way you want it to be. In Cinema 4D, I actually think it's better, and we're going to look into using PoseMorphs in a minute. So the way that it works, if you're going to be doing this blend shape or PoseMorphs way, is that, if you have a character, let's say, we all know that a character is made out of like points, right? Little points all over your character. And then these points are like, connected together. And when they're connected together, there creates a mesh of polygons on your model. But the thing is that it all comes down to these vertices. Okay. So what you can do is you could like, move these vertices up, let's say, and then you could make him smile. Then you could like, for example, make a shape where he smiles, and then you could make one where he frowns. It's kind of like, you would just move the vertices around and you make different shapes, okay? Or you make one, for example, and he has a mouth position like an O, okay? And what you're really doing is you're moving these points around on the surface of the model, okay? So the other way you can do, okay, is something called a joint-based rig, okay? So what this does is, let's say you have a face, okay? What this does is that you actually put joints in different parts of your model. Let's say you've got eyebrows, okay? So you put joints on different parts of your model, and that you create the different expressions by moving the joints around, okay, rather than having direct access to the points as you would in the blend shape. But what are the joints moving on your model to get the different expressions? Can anybody venture to guess? What do the joints move on your model? Any guesses there?
I'm just waiting. So Ben was saying joint-based rig, something to do. Oh wait, I'm not saying that out loud. Mars says the polys. Hannah says weight
Right.
points. Joe says UVs.
Okay. Go ahead. Weights, points, yes. So the joints are also moving the points. Very good. Who said that?
That was Hannah again.
Good,
Well done.
Hannah. So the joints are also moving the points. So really, you're still, in both ways, you're still moving points, okay? But what's happening is that the joints are kind of like an intermediary between you and the joints. And what you can do is by weighting, okay? When you do the joint base ridge, you can weight the points. So as what we can do is that you can move less points than you would have to do if you were doing PoseMorphs. And you can also create constraints and parenting of joints. and a lot of things that you can't do when you're just doing blend shapes or PoseMorphs. So which is better, PoseMorphs or joint-based rigs? And the reality of it is that there are benefits to each way, okay? First of all, on this way, on the blend shape or on the PoseMorph, this is really easy to set up to do, okay? You could just start creating expressions and mouth phonemes and all kinds of stuff. There's not a lot of setup. You just start morphing your face into the different kind of expressions you want, and you're off to the races, okay? In the case of, and also with this, is that you really have a lot of control because you have access to every single point, even the ones on the back of the head or whatever, you know, you could do. So you access to, I'll just put access to all points, okay? So it's easy to do, access to all points. Okay, so what are the benefits of joint-based weighting? Well, first of all, is that you have access to constraints, right? You have weighting, which I already said over here, and you don't have to worry about all the different points on your thing, okay? So each one of these has benefits, okay? So what we're going to do today is we're going to start out by looking at doing PoseMorphs, blend shapes, okay? And then we're going to look at doing a joint-based rig, okay? So without too much further ado, unless there are any questions, we're going to bring our old friend up, Billy, and we're going to start weighting him. I mean, we're going to start creating some facial rigging and facial animation for him. So I guess what let me hide my webcam like that. And now let's go ahead. Oh, by the way, I did say that Miles actually sent me a piece that he did based on our ZBrush sculpting stuff. So I wanted to show that to the class because I always like showing work that's done by the students. And pretty cool, actually. He's got some nice action in the ear, sort of has, you even have the tongue going on, which is kind of interesting. But it has a nice flow to it. It's really, it's a nice little thing. So good work, Miles. Appreciate you sharing that with everybody. I like this piece. All right, now let's get on to creating some facial animation for this character and facial rig. So right now it's pretty, you know, simple. By the way, this character has been rigged. If you look at it, it looks a little bit different than the rig we did last. Oh, I didn't do the bottom parts. Okay. It's actually rigged with the advanced biped rig, and we used the Mixamo control rig last time. But we're only going to concentrate on the face today anyway. So as you can see that we've got the head controller right here, okay? And what we can do is you can see that just basically all the joints, all the points in the head, okay? You're welcome, Miles. Thanks for sharing that. That was cool. All the points on the head are basically rigged to the head bone, which actually, if I go into the character object, under binding, you could see, that bone. And by the way, if you want to follow Miles, it's Frith Studio on Twitter. So all of those points are weighted to that head. So that's easy enough to understand. We've got that. Everything's going on like that. So now what we want to do is we want to start doing this PoseMorphs. So how do we get started doing this? So all we have to do really is to get the PoseMorph started is right click on the head, which is right here. This is the head. It's just really, you know, this mesh. And here's the subdivision surface for it. I'm going to right click on the head. Okay. And we're going to say rigging tags. We're going to add what's called a PoseMorph tag. Okay. And there it is. There's our PoseMorph tag. Now, once that's set up on the properties for the tag, it's asking us what kind of PoseMorphs do we want to make. Now, there's actually a lot of choices here, but when it comes to like facial expressions, the one you really want to use is this points. So we're going to click points. As soon as we make points, we get taken to this tag little tabs, right? And what we're going to do is you can see that we have a couple of things listed here. We have base pose and we have pose 0, okay? So what I want to do is I want to create a little pose morph for the eyebrows going up. So I'm going to double click this over here and I'm going to say eyebrows up, okay? Now what I'm going to do is, and then this is the strength of the pose. I'm going to make the pose 0% and there's no change. So, and I'm going to make the strength 100% and the eyebrows don't go up, right? That's interesting, and that's because I didn't move the eyebrows up yet, okay? So while I'm at this pose, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the points mode, okay? Now I'm in the points mode. Now you can see that all these polygons here in the middle are all created by the subdivision surface, okay? So it's just, I just have to worry about these points, okay, which are the actual points of the mesh. The other ones are being created algorithmically. So what I'm going to do is actually I can put on symmetry. Now symmetry is something new, relatively new in Cinema 4D, because before you had to actually do them separately. But I'm noticing some strange things, by the way, when it comes to symmetry, that I hope it doesn't happen now, but anyway. So what I can do is I can just select, like, let's say I'll select this point, right? And I'll select this point, and this point, and this point, and this point, and this point. And you see they got selected on the other side too, right? And I'm just going to move them up like to over here. Now, that's okay. That looks okay. But the thing is I also want to move these points on top of it. So I'm going to select, you know, let's say I'll select this point. Well, let's say I'll move this point up a little bit and back. Okay. And then I'll, for example, let's just do them all at the same time. Make things easier. Move it back. Okay. Something like that. And, you know, if you want, you can go ahead and get it, you know, more of what you want, depending on what you're doing. For example, yeah, so it could be something like that. Maybe we want to move this one back a little bit. Whatever you want to do. Okay, so there you go. If you want, you can move other points in the head, but let's say that that's going to be our eyebrows up right here. Okay, eyebrows up. So now you can test. Now notice, very important, you're in edit mode right here. Okay, you have to be in edit mode when you create your pose morphs. Okay, basically. So now if I were to check the strength of this pose, okay, you could see how that's, I'm actually checking the strength of this pose, but we're still in edit mode. So you never animate these poses when you're in edit mode. To animate them, you have to be in animate mode. It kind of makes sense, I would presume. Okay, so let's make another pose. All right, let's make another pose. Let's say we want to make another pose. You see, as soon as I make another pose, okay, eyebrows up, it goes back to the base pose. And this is the base pose here. Okay, so now we're going to make another pose. And for this pose, I want to select like maybe these things, these points over here. Okay, and I want to bring them down to about like right here. Okay, and I want to bring these down a little bit to maybe about right here. Now they're intersecting, so I want to move them, bring them forward a little bit like that. Okay, and maybe bring this up over here. Now, by the way, you can use the sculpting tools in Cinema 4D, which has its own sculpting set of sculpting tools, if you prefer to make your PoseMorphs or blend shapes with those sculpting tools. Okay, a lot of people do that. And sometimes it's actually really useful to do that. Okay, so now he has his eyes kind of like closed, right? A little bit. You can bring this forward a little bit. So there we have it. So now we're going to call this eyes closed. Now I can animate this pose, you know, if I want to have his eyes blink. Okay, and you could also, for example, you know, make his eyes a little sleepy, you know, or if he's like really tired, you could do that, you know, or he could have his eyes all the way up or all the way down, like if he's sleeping. Okay, so let's make another pose now. Okay, let's say we're going to go ahead and we're going to say we'll make another pose here, and we're going to make, let's say we want to make one when he's kind of like smiling. Okay, so I'm going to click on this joint right here. I mean this, actually I'm going to first click on this tool here, and I'm going to click on the soft selection. Okay, and soft selection, I'll make it about 16, let's say. I'll click on this thing. Now you can see that might be a little bit too much. So we'll make it down to maybe about 14. Okay, let's see, maybe about 13. Although that is an unlucky number. So, oh, thanks, Jim. Very cool of you to say so, and everybody else. Once in a while I look at the chat, although I really like to leave that to Elly to do. But I do keep an eye on the chat. So the thing is that you can see that what soft selection does is that it kind of like makes, it feathers your selection. So this point is fully selected, and these are less selected. So if I drag that up, do you see how, like, for example, it's actually not just doing that one point? Okay, it's doing like a lot of them. Okay, maybe I'll make it a little bit of a wider smile like that. Okay, so now he's doing that. Now I actually like to do soft selection here, but it's actually getting the bottom of the lips, and I don't want the bottom of the lips selected. So I'm going to actually turn off soft selection, and I'm going to, you know, select, oh, just select some points like this one and this one and this one and this one. Sort of move them up, move these points up probably a little bit. Well, this is the kind of thing that you would do with PoseMorphs. You see how easy it is to set up? Like you don't have to set up any rigs. So then, you know, and maybe you want to take these kind of ones and you want to, this one and there's one in the back, which is kind of hard to see here. Kind of like over here. Okay. And maybe drag it back a little bit so it goes back. whatever. Let's say I'm not going to fool around too much, but we have over here, and now you can see that, now he's like smiling. Okay. So we're going to call this one smile. All right, let's make another one. Now, so these are some expressions. We can make one of maybe, where he frowns. Okay. Like you could make one, I didn't, wasn't intending to do this, but I just thought about doing it. You can make one where, for example, he frowns. Do something like that. Why don't we save that one anyway? Because if you're going to have a smile, you might as well have a frown. Okay, let's take off that, and you might want to touch it up a little bit. Maybe push that line up. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll save this one as frown. So let's do another one, and maybe we'll do like a mouth position, like a phenome. So let's do the MBP one. Okay. Now I could just call it M, but if you want, you could, because I know that MB and P are all the same. Okay. But we'll call it MBP. Okay. And for this one, I'll select some points, maybe these over here and these over here. And actually, you know what? First, let me do these. These I'm going to bring down a little bit. These two. Right, I'll bring them kind of like down to here. Then bring these down a little bit. These down a touch. Maybe this one down a little bit. See, I got symmetry on. Symmetry seems to be working perfectly, so that's good. Okay. And then I will, like, for example, take these now and drag. Oh, let me get these two. Now, see, here's where it kind of gets weird, but actually it seems to be working. Okay. So anyway, so we'll drag these forward and maybe drag them up. Okay, so then like it's kind of like they're meeting there. Okay, and then these, I would drag these forward maybe and up. So they touch there. And then these maybe up. So it's kind of an M. And you can go ahead and go to different parts of your model and arrange it exactly sort of how you want the M to look. Okay, but there you go. Let's just say that's fine. Okay, I'm not going to go crazy on it like that. By the way, I noticed here that there's some like weird points sticking out here, which is odd, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. They're just stray points, which we can get rid of. As a matter of fact, if I just go here and just click on them, I should just be able to like delete them. There. All right, so anyway, so then we have this M, so that's done. Okay, so then we have a okay, and then let's do like another mouth position, another phenome, and let's do like an ah. Okay, so just simply what I'm going to do is take these things. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hide the tongue right now because I don't want to bother with the tongue right now, but it would be the same thing. You would need to PoseMorph the tongue or rig it in some ways. By the way, you can combine PoseMorphs and rigs and joint-based rigs. You can make a hybrid approach. That's also, justifiable. Okay, but I'm going to hide the tongue right now because I don't want to deal with the tongue. So I'm going to take this. Okay, maybe I'll take this one too, and I'll just move that down. And then I'll take these, okay, and maybe move them to here. Well, let's exaggerate it, because the whole point of exaggerating it is because what I want to do is I want to show you that you don't have to, oops, you don't have to go all the way when you're using these PoseMorphs. See, now here's where like I'm noticing some strange stuff. I've got this point selected. I start moving it down and it works. So anyway, so we got that going. We've got, some of this looks a little bit weird. We'll select this, we'll move it up a little bit. These have to be moved down. Okay, to here, let's say, and maybe these over to here. And maybe these up a little bit. Okay, whatever. Let's just say, like I said, I'm not going to really be too crazy about this stuff, but let's just say that's going to be the ah. Okay. Okay, and you like I said, this you can go ahead and make it exactly the way you want it. So that'll be the ah. Okay, so we'll call it ah. Oops, I have my caps locked down. All right, so now we have like a bunch of poses in here in the PoseMorph, otherwise known as blend shapes. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is, now that we have some blend shapes set up, and you could set up different ones. Like for example, if let's say you're doing, I don't know, did anybody see Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio? That was, it was interesting actually. But let's say, for example, you wanted to, well, actually, let's say we clicked on this point, we enabled soft selection, right? And we made it down to about 8. Okay, and did I make a new pose yet or not? No, so let's add a pose. Okay, and let's take this and we're going to like grow the nose big, like if he's telling a lie. Okay, and then I'll just call this one lying, right? So now we have a pose for, like, for example, when he lies. Okay, so we've got a bunch like that. And what we're going to do now is, let's take off that soft selection, is now let's go back to the object mode, okay? And let's go from, in the pose morph, we're gonna switch now from edit to animate. Now, this looks weird, man. It's all screwed up, right? And that's because all the poses are at 100%, okay? So we wanna move all these poses back to 0. Now, when you're in edit mode, what's nice is that you have this little pose mixer here, okay? So this is really cool because you could mix the poses. You don't have to have one poser up and the other one all the way down, or one all the way down and the other one all the way up. You can mix them here. So for example, let's say, first of all, let's say you wanted to raise the eyebrows, but you didn't want to raise the eyebrows all the way. Let's say you just wanted to raise the eyebrows somewhat of the way. You can just go to 60%. And then you could like close the eyes a little bit, like kind of like a cool looking guy, right? And maybe you just want to have a little bit of a smile. You can have a little bit of a smile there, okay? Or you can have a little bit of a frown. Ugh. He's like, ugh. Then he slowly gets really disgusted. But, you can just have a little bit. That's the whole nice thing about it, okay? So, or if you want to make his nose a little bit bigger, or maybe you want to make his nose throb, like if a bee stung it, okay? I don't know how much of this is coming out in the frame rate, but of the live stream. But so, for example, let's say, for example, he's there. You know, you take the head controller. You know, you go to a frame and you keyframe the head controller. You know, you go a few frames later. You know, and you make it come down a little bit. Keyframe that. Then you go a few frames later, and you know, you make it come up like that. So his head's going like this. And let's say you want to make him blink at the same time. So you can have him, you can go ahead to the PoseMorph now. And you can keyframe the eyes closed at 0. Then you could go over here when he's all the way down, move this up to 100, keyframe that, okay? And then have him come up back to his eyes opening. So you have like, see, he's blinking now, right? And maybe, for example, as his head comes up, you could keyframe like the eyebrows up. And then as he's coming up to here, you can open those, like if he got surprised. See that? And then you might want to put a hint of a smile starting here. So keyframe that, and you can go up to 22, and then you can put a little smile in, a bit of a smile in there. Keyframe that. So now you have like, you know, maybe you want like that. So now he kind of comes up and he smiles a little bit. Or let's say, for example, you want to have him talk. So let's say you wanted him to say the word mama or mommy, okay? Because actually I could use the base pose as an E. It's not actually a perfect E, but it might work for an E. Okay, so let's go ahead and take off all these keyframes. So now there's no keyframe left, okay? So the thing is that you can go over here to about 14. You could keyframe the M, okay? And then go ahead down a few frames, okay? Go to the M, keyframe that, right? And then go ahead a little bit forward to the Ah. So you keyframe the M going to 0, oops, the M going to 0, and the Ah. But before you do that, you should go back to this frame and keyframe the Ah at 0, okay? And then you go over to here, keyframe the Ah at over here, maybe not too far up. See, when you make your PoseMorphs, you should always do them a little bit more than you need them, because you can hold back on the pose. Like the pose goes all the way to here, but I'll probably always use it here unless he's really, maybe he's an opera singer or something. So I'll go to about like 66%. I'll keyframe that. So now he's ma, you know, he's a ma, right? Maybe you could hold the M a little bit if you want ma, you know, or something, whatever. So we'll go back. So we'll keyframe back on the, we'll go ahead a bunch of keyframes, whatever. We'll bring the ah back to 0, okay? And we'll bring the M back to 100. Okay, so now he's going mom, mom, mom. And then for the E, we're just going to go ahead to the rest pose, which is going to be nothing, me. Okay, and then we'll hold that for a little while. And then we'll maybe just put in like a hint of a smile. A little bit of a smile there. So he's saying like mommy, And he smiles a little bit. So now, obviously, we only made 2 phonemes here, M, B, and P, and A, but you'd have to make all of them. You'd have to make O, U, you'd have to make T, F, you know, and so on and so forth. Okay. If you want to know what the phonemes are, you could look them up on the internet. Okay, so you can go ahead and make those phonemes. So, and then of course you can add blinks to this. So maybe right where he says me, you know, maybe you want to keyframe the head. Okay, me. Okay, maybe move his head a little bit. Keyframe that. So, you know, mommy, and then maybe put a blink in there where you want it to be. Eyes closed. Well, actually, you know what? Maybe I want to start it here, eyes closed. Go here, close your eyes, and then open it here. So we have this. Okay, so anyway, you get the idea that you're using these PoseMorphs to create whatever you want to do, and then you could animate the eyes, you know, if you wanted to do maybe a Groucho Marx or something. So that's the whole point of it, and it's very powerful. Okay, you could do some amazing stuff with actually a lot of, you know, actually I'll tell you something. This is the way all character animation was done at one point. Okay, it was with PoseMorphs. Then probably somewhere down the line, somebody started adding joints to the face. And then some guys started, he made a whole big face rig. And he was like, look at my face rig. You can do everything with this rig. And a lot of people were like, well, why do we want to do it? We're happy with PoseMorphs. You know, why do we want to construct a whole big rig on the face? We don't need that. And then some other people were like, well, we can do it because we can do it. And then some people were like, well, we don't want your face rig. And then other people started saying, but you know what? There's some good things about this face rig. And then that became a whole thing. So now the whole point is what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to touch facial rigging for your project if you don't want to. Okay. But now, having said that, is there any questions about PoseMorphs, aka blend shapes, and animating in Cinema 4D? Elly.
So going back to a few minutes ago, Andrew is wondering, is there any way to do soft selection along a line or an edge, like all points on a horizontal or vertical edge?
You know, that's actually a good question. There might be. I would say that, like, you know, I've never quite looked into that. Let me see something here. Let me open up a new project. I will create a plane. Okay, I'll make it editable. I will switch to road shading lines. Okay, so right now, for example, if you were to enable soft selection, which I can't. Why? Oh, because I'm not in point mode. So I go to point mode, okay, and I click on enable soft selection. Okay, I should have put more points on this, but you can see that, you know, it's sort of a fall off. If this had more points on it, let me subdivide this thing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to say mesh, add, subdivide. Actually, mesh, add, subdivide. There we go. And let me subdivide it again. Okay. So now, for example, if I were to just select like something like that, and I were to move it up, you see I can get like, this is a kind of soft selection here. And you know what you can actually do is you could actually sort of have like a dome. Like right now, this is like a peak type of a thing, linear. But if you do a subdivide into a dome, okay, now you see it looks different. See, it looks more like a dome, right? And then if you like subdivide to a bell, okay, now it looks like a bell, that's really useful, okay? And there's different ones. Now, maybe if you used a vertex map, well, let's see, a spline, you could actually use a spline. Oh, this is actually interesting because you could like create exactly what you want your thing to look like. So for example, if you wanted your thing to look like this, okay, you could, create that kind of effect, okay, on your soft selection. But well, I guess if you selected this, like a line, I mean, you could do it with a line of stuff. But I'm not really sure exactly what you mean. So I'm assuming that like you just want to select one point and then it just gets subdivided along that line. And there probably is a way to do it. I'm just not thinking about it right now. So, but let's get back to this. Any other questions?
Yes, there was one more quick one from Ian. He was wondering, for really exaggerated speaking, would you make specific pose morphs for that kind of dialogue?
Yeah, you either could make it like over the top type of pose morphs, for like, for example, you could have like an ah, and then you could have another one that's a ah, and have two separate pose morphs in that way. Or you could just make the exaggerated one and just pull the slider up to 25% on the normal one. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't have to go all the way if he's not exaggerating.
Cool. Yeah, Ian says, I see. Also, Andrew said that answered it, so thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So you could use edge mode in the soft selection. That would work too. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So unless there are any other questions, what we'll do is we're going to go into the joint-based approach to facial rigging. Okay.
One has just popped in,
Okay.
just before you move on, from Philip, wondering, can I combine two poses to create a new one?
Yeah, yeah. You can actually like take two poses and move them up to 100% and then create a new pose based on that. So you can combine two poses, or you can make one 100% and one 50% and make that a new pose. So yes.
Also, can you use fields? Can you use fields
Yeah.
in the PoseMorph?
Yes. Yes, you can. You can use
Cool.
fields as well. So you can set up fields, make them part of the PoseMorph. So that could be something that, there's all kinds of uses. By the way, you don't have to use PoseMorphs for facial expressions. You could use PoseMorphs for what are called correction PoseMorphs or correction poses. Like for example, if you were to move like an arm and you wanted, actually, you know what? We did this one time a long time ago. If you wanted to move an arm and you wanted the muscle to bulge when you move the arm up, you could actually create a PoseMorph where the muscle bulges and then use Espresso based on the angle of the two joints to drive the pose.
That's cool. Also, I was going to say, I've used the PoseMorph before. I was doing like a MoGraph setup, and it was a car that was then coming apart to pieces.
Yeah.
And so my first kind of like morph was the car, and my second was all the bits apart. And then it was a really easy way to animate between those two sort of transitions.
Yeah, don't think that PoseMorphs is just for character animation or for facial expressions. It has a tremendous value in many, 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 many different things. So,
cool, thanks, Joe.
Sure. All right, so now the thing is that now we're going to get into this to the second half of this class, and that is we are going to talk about we are going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the rig-based facial expression. So what we're going to do, is we are going to hang on just 1 second here. Okay. So we're going to start with the eyebrows. And I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to show our Garrod shading line so we can see where the isoparms are on the character. And what we're going to do is we're going to, if you don't see it already, we're going to take our character menu and we're going to drag out the character menu into its own little window here. And we're going to take our joint tool. Now, one thing we're going to do is that with our joint tool selected, we're going to click on draw for the symmetry. So we're going to create joints symmetrically, okay, on the YZ plane. The other thing I want to do is I want to turn snapping on, and I want to make sure that our snapping is being snapped to points, okay? So we'll do that, okay? And now what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to hold down the Alt key because that's how you draw joints. You have to click down the Alt key with the joint tool. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to snap a joint right onto that point right there, okay? Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, oh, actually, so then I get two joints right here, okay? And you know what? I'm going to put all my joints for the face rig into its own null to keep things neater. And I might put nulls inside of those nulls to keep things even neater, okay? So we're going to take these two joints, we're going to put them in a null. But these are the two joints we just created, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, I'm going to alt click, and I'm going to create a joint right there in the middle joint. You notice I skipped a point, okay? And then I'm going to hold down, and that created two, right? And then I'm going to hold down my alt key, and actually I don't want to make children, so I'm just going to click off the hierarchy, and I'm going to click there, and that's going to create these joints. So actually I'll create a bunch of joints here. Actually, I'm going to put them all in this null, okay? Now I'm going to select all these joints, okay? And I'm going to say for the joint, I want to make it a custom size, and I want to make them all 1 centimeter. So they're all a lot smaller, okay? Now, right now, there are these circles right now, okay? So, well, they're axes. See, they're axes, right? So I don't want to show them like that. I actually want to go ahead and I want to show them as sphere wireframe, like wire spheres, like that, okay? So that's how I want them to look. Then what I want to do is I want to name them, okay? So I'm going to take this one, and this one, and I'm going to go back to the basic tab, and I'm going to call them all L_eyebrow, okay? And then I'm going to click this one, and this one, like that, and I'm going to call them right R_eyebrow, because they're on the right and on the left. That's pretty clear, I would assume. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to number them. And my convention, you don't have to follow my convention. You can call this R underscore, or you don't have to have an R underscore eyebrow. You just have to be consistent. You can call it right eyebrow, right dash eyebrow, or you can call them, you know, you go left eye, whatever you want to do. It's just that I'm using a convention that some people set up a long time ago. But actually on the Mixamo control rig, it's different actually. So different people use different conventions. It's up to you. So the thing is, but I usually say is that I count from the center to the left. So I would count this as R eyebrow 1, I eyebrow 2, and I eyebrow 3. But if you want, you could call it R eyebrow inner, I eyebrow center, R eyebrow, boy, that's a tongue twister, outer, you know, whatever you want to do. But anyway, so we're going to click on this one. We're going to call it I eyebrow -1, right? R eyebrow -2, and then I eyebrow -3. Okay, and then I will do it the same with the left. Okay, so now we've got these joints named. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to start weighting. I need to start weighting some of the points to these joints. Okay, and the way you do that is we bring up our old friend, the weight manager. Okay, our very important weight manager tool. Okay, and now we can start weighting points with the weight manager. Okay, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to actually, let me make this a little thinner here. We're actually going to go ahead and we are going to uncheck the subdivision surface. Okay, and we're going to now. Well, before I do that, so you notice that the head has a weight tag already applied. This weight tag can be found here in the rigging tags under weight tag. Okay, so it has a weight tag. It has a skin deformer on it, and the skin deformer can be found here. Okay, if your thing that you want to weight doesn't have these two things, you'll never be able to weight. So you have to make sure it has a weight tag and it has a skin deformer on it. Okay, once you have that, you're ready to go. Okay, so in our weight tag, you'll notice there's two bones in there. Okay, and these two bones show up in our weight manager. Very simple. Weight tag has these two bones, they show up in our weight manager. If I get rid of one of them in the weight tag, if I try to get rid of one of them here, I can, and it gets rid of it here too, so it's backwards too. But if I get rid of it here in the weights tag, it doesn't show up in the weight manager. Pretty simple to understand, okay? So what we want to do is we want to weight to these new joints that we created, but they're not in the weight manager. So we want to click on the weight tag. Let me lock this for a minute, so that way if I select something else, it doesn't disappear. And I'm going to select these bones, or joints really, and I'm going to drag them into the weight tag. And now they show up in the weights manager. Okay, it's not that hard to understand. They just have to be in the weight tag if you want to weight to them. Okay, I wonder if you just drag them in here actually. No, you can't drag them right in here. You have to drag them into the weight tag. So I'm going to unlock this. Okay, now I can start weighting to this. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, now when I want to weight to this thing, I want to use this weight tool. I'm going to choose the weight tool, and I want to make sure that symmetry is enabled. And then if this is empty, like it often is empty, it's just there because I put it there before, you want to tell it the bones on the left are going to be L underscore, and the bones on the right are going to be right R underscore. Now by doing this, I'll only have to weight half of my model. Okay, if you don't have the symmetry set up in this naming convention, then you're going to be doing double the work, okay? And if things are really complex, as they often are when weighting is a very complex and tedious task, okay? What is going to take you 2 hours is going to take you 4 hours, okay? If you don't do it, if you don't set this up right, okay? So you want to go ahead and you want to weight like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off our, subdivision surface, okay? We're going to click on this over here, and you can see that all these points are weighted 100% to what? They're all weighted to the head bone, to the head joint. They're all weighted to the head joint, except for in the neck, where they're weighted 50% to the head and 50% to the neck. And then the bottom is weighted to the neck, okay? So what we want to do is we want to start weighting. Okay, so what we're going to do is on the weight tool, we're going to say options get to 100% over here, okay? And then we're going to click on our eyebrow 1, which is this joint right here, and we're going to click on that point. And now that point is weighted 100% to our eyebrow 1. And the beauty of the symmetry thing with the weight tool, which is what I explained about 5 minutes ago, was that this is now weighted 100% to L eyebrow 1. See, the symmetry is working. I only have to do half the work. So now I'm going to select our eyebrow 1 and eyebrow 2, these two joints, and click on this point. Now, since this is set to 100%, the system is smart enough that it knows that it's going to weight this point 50% to each joint. It distributed the weight. Now I'm going to go to eyebrow 2 and click on this point, and it's going to go to 100% to that joint. Okay? And then I'm going to select these two joints, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go 50% to each of these 2 points. Okay? And then I'm going to go to the last one, which is this one, and I'm going to click it over here, and it's going to be 100%. Now, so I've weighted these, and they're weighted on the other side, the right way, but I'm not done with the weighting yet because I need to weight these points on top. So this point over here, I want to weight 50% to this joint and 50% to the head. It's already 100% to the head. So I'm just going to select the head here like that, and I'm going to click it, and now you can see it's 50% to the head and 50% to that joint. Now this point here, I want to go 50% to the head and 25 to each of these. So it's already 100% to the head, so I'm just going to select both of those, and I'm going to change this to 25%, like this. And I'm going to click on it, and now you can see it's 50% to the head and 25% to each of those two joints. Now I'm going to go to this joint here, and I'm going to click on this thing over here, okay, and the head, make this back to 100. See, I don't really need to do that. I could just go 50% onto the, and just select this one joint here, because it's already 100% to the head, and that will also give me 50-50. Okay, so now on this one, it's already 100% to the head, so I do want to go 25 on this, okay, and I want to select 2 and 3, okay, click on it, and now we got 50 on the head, 25 to these two joints. Then I want to go here, make this back to 50, click on this, now we got 50 on the head, 50 on this joint, okay. Then on this one, I also want to do that, okay, 50 on the head, 50 on that joint. Okay, and on this one, let's lower this to 25. And now I've given it 75 on the head and 25 to that joint. Okay, now the one in the middle, I want to move this back to 100, and I want to weight this one, the one in the middle, to be 50% between L eyebrow 1 and R eyebrow 1, like that. Say it's 50% to each of those. And this one, I want it to be 25% to each of those. So I'm going to lower that to 25, like this. And now it's 50 on the head and 25 on each of those. Okay, so now I've weighted these points, right? So now let's see if it works. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we're going to turn on the subdivision surface again, right? And I'm going to click on one of these joints. Okay, you notice, by the way, sometimes when you click on them, like I keep clicking on the joint and I'm like, I can't click on the joint, I'm clicking on the head. Okay, but if I open up the layers palette and I lock the head, the layer that the head is on, because the head is on that layer. Okay, if I lock it, now I can like pick the joints with ease. Okay, so now, for example, this is good because now, like, for example, I can select these two joints, let's say, or I just select one of them. Oh, I got that snap on. So I'm going to turn the snap off so I can like raise that up, take these two, raise it up. You know, now he's got sort of a sympathetic look on his character. So you can see that really, this is saving us time on the joint-based approach because since there's weighting going on, I only have to really move 6 controls rather than 24. There'd be 24 points I would have to consider to move on basically the PoseMorph approach. So that's one benefit that you could see right away of using, you know, a joint-based facial rig, and probably why most people tend to like gravitate towards here. You can have like one eyebrow up a little bit and kind of create that expression, right? Or, for example, I could, you know, move these down, you know, and then he could be kind of like an evil little guy, you know, and I can maybe bring it forward a little bit. If you wanted to make him evil. I could also weight some of these other points here so that, you know, you won't have this kind of like creasing. I can weight some of those points to like 10 or 20% or whatever, you know, it's up to you. Now, one thing that's really popular when it comes to facial rigging is the idea of using controllers, okay? So the thing is that what you can do is, let's say, for example, I create, I want to create a rectangle somewhere around this joint. So I'm just going to select that joint first, hold down the Alt key, and then create a rectangle. So where's my rectangle? It's just really, really big over here. Okay, so it's a huge rectangle. So I want to make this a lot smaller. I want to make it like, you know, this big. Okay. And then in this case, what I want to do is I want to take this rectangle and I want to move it forward away from the joints. Okay. And then what I want to do, and it doesn't matter where its pivot is. Actually, in some cases, it matters with the controllers. Like they have to be on the joint. In this case, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. Okay. So I'm going to take this rectangle and I'm going to name it R brow. And then if you want, there's a convention that controllers are named con plus, which is what I saw, what people used to do in places that I've worked at and stuff like that. So I follow that convention, but you don't have to. You can just call it R brow mover or whatever. Okay, but a lot of people call it con plus. So now the thing is, I'm going to right click this. I'm going to make it editable. Okay. And I'm going to go to the point mode. Okay. Select those points. Okay. You know, shrink it down, like maybe like that. And then click like mesh, add, subdivide that, right? Get rid of these points because I don't need them. Okay, and then like, let's say, for example, I just wanted to make this a little, you know, put a little style into it like that. You can make these controls look anywhere you want to. If you want, you can make little curlicues on them or something. It's up to you. But we're going to keep it pretty simple like that, okay? And there we have this controller. Now, what I want to do is I want to take all the right eyebrow controls, and I want to right-click them, and I want to give them a constraint tag here, okay? And I want to give them a parent constraint, and I want to put this right eyebrow control into that parent constraint, okay? So that they're all constrained, they're all children of this control right here. And then if I click on the thing, now I can move all of them up together with this control, okay? So I could use this control, I could also move this control to the left or to the right, wherever I want to do with it, or I can just move it up and down, okay? And as a result, these things are, you can even rotate it if you wanted to rotate it like that. Okay. But the nice thing is that I can do that, and I can still have access to these individual controls. Okay, so you have like a master parent, okay, and then you have the individual controls. So now that's how you can like rig the eyebrow. So in this example, the idea was to show you a little bit about how to rig the to start doing joint-based facial rigging. And you can see the differences now between this and the PoseMorph approach, where PoseMorphing is all points are available to you, whereas this, you have like something in between you and the points that you can create constraints, you could do point weighting, you can do a lot of stuff. Any questions so far?
Yes, there have been a couple. So back on the topic of PoseMorphs, this came in just as we moved on from Miles. The PoseMorphs only affect geometry. Could you affect materials, for example, getting a red face or something like that?
Yeah, yes, you can. Yes. Yes. I've done that, and and you know, I'm not going to recreate it here. It would take too long, but yes, you can.
Cool. And we've had one from Mohammed saying, how do you handle the polymesh modeling process issue matter?
Well, I don't know exactly what he's talking about. However, I'll tell you one thing is that one of the benefits of using a joint-based facial rig is you can edit your polygons, and it doesn't mess up the PoseMorph. It doesn't mess up the rigging. In PoseMorphs, if you start editing your mesh, okay, it'll mess it up. It'll mess up the PoseMorph. So like you have to make darn sure that you're not going to want to change your rigging on the PoseMorphs. I mean, and then start PoseMorphing again, because your PoseMorphs will be messed up. I don't know if that's what he's referring to, but that is one of the great benefits of joint-based facial rigging, is you don't have to worry about editing. Like I can work on this nose now. It's not going to mess up the eyes, or I can start subdividing things. It's, you know, I mean, it might mess it up a little bit, you know, depending on what you're doing. If you start actually, you know, changing things right around here, it's going to mess it up, but it's not going to have an all over effect. So I'm not sure if that's what he meant, but that's something to keep in mind. What else?
Cool. Yeah, one quick one. You may, however, have already answered it immediately afterwards, but Hannah was wondering what happens if you wanted to turn or rotate the head now? Would the eyebrows follow, or would we have to put them under the head or use constraints? But then I think you went
That's a very,
to...
very good question. So the thing is that right now, if you were to rotate the head, okay, you're going to have a problem, okay? Because if I were to rotate the head, watch what happens. See that? The rig is not rotating with the head, right? But if I were to take this master null, and if I were to constrain it, to the head, parent constraint, and then I were to pick up this controller here like that. And now if I were to click on the head and rotate it, now it's fine. Okay. And now I can go ahead and everything still works fine. See?
Cool.
So that is a good
Thanks.
question, and that's the answer.
Cool.
Okay.
There's
now,
another quick one, sorry, just from Scott that's come in. So let's say the character is rigged and weighted. Then he wants to add some extra detail to the geometry. What would need to be turned off before we tweak the geometry? How do we relink the rig after adding new geometry?
Right. So one thing you could do, okay, if you ever change your geometry on something, okay, like for example, if I were to go ahead and change my geometry, I don't want to spend a long time on this because this is like a rabbit hole we can go to, but if I go to the skin tag on something, let me actually open up my layers. If I go to the skin tag on something, and if I turn it off, right? And if I change my geometry, right? See, right now, if I change my geometry, what I can do is I can go back to the weight tag and I can say reset bind pose. And then you turn your skin back on. And then the changes you made are bound to the rig with the changes. And that's what you would do. I don't know if it's worth doing right now, but I mean, like, for example, you know, like without doing that, if I were to like, you know, move this up, right? And now I were to well, now it's just moving up like that, but there are certain, without getting too deep into it, there are certain times when, no, actually, you know what this is? This is more like if you want to move a joint, actually. Let's say I want to move this, that's what I'm actually trying to say. Let's say I want to move this joint, right, from here to here. If I move that, it moves to geometry, right? But let's say I want to move that and not move the geometry. I just want a new position for my joint, okay? So what I can do is I can go ahead to this skin tag, turn it off, move my joint to the new position, go to the weight tag, hit reset bind pose. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's the opposite actually. Go back to the position, I move this up, hit set bind pose. Then turn on the skin tag again, and now this joint is in a new position. Do you see that? That's how, okay, that's what you would do if you wanted to, you've rigged up your character and you've figured out that a joint is in the wrong place and you want to move it, okay? You turn off the skin tag, move the joint to the new position, you hit set bind pose again, and then you turn the skin object back on, and now the joint's going to be in the new position. Okay, so now actually let's talk a little bit about well, because 1:30 now. So then, like, for example, let's just keep going, actually. Let's go ahead now and let's go to the point mode, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to take our joint tool. We've got draw symmetry on, okay? We're going to like create, oh, we got to put the snapping back on. We're going to create like joints here, here. Uh-oh, I don't really want to. So those are the two joints we created. They're in the wrong place, okay? We want to drag them into this null, which we're going to call up our face rig. okay? So we created these two joints, okay? We're going to go ahead and we're going to create these two joints, okay? And these two. Let's say, oops, let's say these are the ones I want to be able to control the cheeks at. So I'm going to select all of these. It's similar to the eyebrows, okay? And we're going to go ahead to the object field, and we're going to say joint custom. We're going to say like one thing. We're going to turn them into like wireframe spheres like that, just like the other one, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to create, actually, we're going to create more. Now, here's the thing about the mouth, okay? The thing about the mouth is I skipped over 2 here, just like I skipped over 2 here. And you can try skipping 2, okay? And then weighting things like, for example, this point would be 100%. Like, let's say you made a joint, you know, sorry. How come I'm not making joints right now? Yeah. So let's say you made these joints here, and then you need to make a joint in the center, by the way, here. So there's a lot of joints you would make, especially around the mouth. There's always a lot of joints around the mouth. Okay. So I could try skipping 1 here, and then 1 here, and then 1 in the corner, and then I can weight the ones in between. However, the mouth is probably the thing that you're going to want the most control over. Okay. So if you're just doing like, it depends. Like, for example, you might be working on a character that never speaks. He just once in a while smiles and winks at the camera, or maybe he just has like a couple of facial expressions you want to do. Okay. You know, like he's not, your piece that you're working on is not about a talking character. Okay. It's about a character who maybe pops his head once in a while and he looks at the camera, maybe has a hint of a smile. So you don't have to really make such an elaborate face rig. Okay. So, however, if you really want to have the most control, I would put a joint on every single one of these. Not up here, because you don't need that much control. But because this way you can get your like oohs and kisses and all, you can really be able to manipulate the mouth very carefully. Okay. So actually, I've actually done that already. Okay. I've actually done that already. And you can see here in this thing, right, that not only did I do one in every part of the mouth, but actually there's one in the back of every lip. And actually in this case, there is a hierarchical relationship. Okay, because if I move one, see the one in the back is hierarchically linked, unlike these. Like for example, this one that I created. This one I created is not hierarchically linked, although it could be. If they were linked hierarchically, it would, if I moved one, it would look like that. And like this is like a way you can get like a sneer. See that? Now the weighting of these joints, let's go back to the other one. For example, if I selected all these joints, and if I were to make them like 1, you know, or less, right? What I would do is I would weight this point 100%. Similar, like I don't really see the big need in doing this over again because we did it up here. But I would weight this point 100% to this joint. This point 50% to both of these joints. This point 100% to this joint. This point 50% between this joint and this joint, which is not created yet. Okay. This point, if I was skipping one, I'd make it 50% between these two joints. Okay. And this point, does anybody know what I would weight this point at? Take a guess.
Well, let's see what we got. Jim says 50.
No, the
Joe
answer
said
would
25.
be, right, this would be 25% to these 4 joints. Because remember, a point must be weighted 100%. Otherwise, and okay, for those of you who don't know that too much about this, okay, this was covered quite extensively in the intro to rigging series. And burned is right. Yeah, 25%. In the intro to rigging series, a point must be weighted 100%. So if you try to weight, if you uncheck this normalize button under commands, uncheck auto normalize. And if I were to take this weighting tool over here, I were to go, whatever, let's say to the neck, and I gave 100%. So now look, oh, wait. Auto normalize is off. So, okay, add. Strength. Well, let's say we try this 150. See, that won't even let me go. But okay, let's go to the weights area, and let's just type into this area. I typed in an 80 here. Well, that automatically makes this one go to 20. But there is a way, I'm just sort of blanking on it right now, is that if you have a joint weighted, so its total weight is more than 100%, then this would give you a red flag. It would say that that's an illegal point. You're not supposed to weight a point more than 100%. So that's why it would be 25% to these 4 joints, okay? And you would go around, like, for example, this one would be 25% between these 4 joints. So if you look at the other face rig that I did here, okay, and for example, if I were to go ahead and turn off the subdivision surface, and I were to go under joints here and click, actually click on the head. Okay. Right. Let's see something here. The head. Head should be in here too. Okay, whatever. So anyway, but you can see how all of these joints, you can see 25%. Now on this one, I have one for each. So these points are 25%, like this point right here is 25% between these two and 50% to this one. And this is 50% between these two. Okay, this one's 25% between these two and 50% to this one. Because on this one, I wanted the most control, and therefore what happened is that I was to, I put a single joint on every one, and I put one on the back of them. Why? Because I can always just ignore it. See, like, for example, I could ignore it and, like, you know, move this point, the other one moves it. But let's say, for example, I'm making like a kissing motion. I have the flexibility of moving back to this joint and moving it forward if I want to. Okay, so that's useful. So, for example, what I can do now is I can, like, for example, if I wanted to make an expression where he goes ahead and he, like, sneers up, you know, you could do that. And then, you know, you could bring this up a little bit, you know, and maybe bring these up a little bit. So you can maybe make that an expression. Right, like an Elvis. So the thing is that, so, I mean, it's the same idea of doing the eyebrows, okay? Except there's one difference here, actually. These points, all of these points on the bottom, from this one, let's actually see what it is. That one, you can see in my face rig, I've actually put a lot more nulls in there to, like, separate the joints. But this one has a constraint in it, and it's a parent constraint to this jaw controller, because all of these joints on the bottom, but not on the top, are constrained to this jaw, okay? So for example, if I were to like move that jaw open, all of these joints are connected to it. So I can make it a thing, I can sort of move this down, and then I can move some of these up if I want to, if I don't like them far down. But this is helpful to me to have all of these joints with a simple constraint here. They're all constraint with a parent constraint, right, to the jaw controller. Okay, so now let's talk about the tongue. Okay, so how would we rig the tongue? So there's like a little thing that we can do. Let's go back to the other one where we haven't rigged anything yet, or what we're working on. Okay, let's go to a side view. Okay, and let's hide the head. Okay, and what we're going to do is like, let's create some bones that are going to be in the tongue. Okay, so let's go ahead in our face rig. Maybe let's make a new null inside of this null, and let's call it tongue. Oops, got my caps locked down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the joint tool. I don't want symmetry because I'm not making, you know, symmetry on the joint tool. So I'm going to take symmetry to none. Okay, I don't really need to snap it because it's going to be in the center. Okay, anyway, because this center of this tongue is in the center. And I'm just going to Alt Control click. Okay, Control click at the first point, Control click the second point, Control click the third point, and I'm creating a joint hierarchy here, right? Click on the tip. Okay, so you can see there's the joint hierarchy. Okay, so we can see that there's a hierarchy of joints inside of that tongue. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to now I can do that, and then later on when I kind of come to animate it, I can go ahead and take the first joint and I can rotate it a little bit. Got to go to object mode, and then I can take the second joint and I can rotate a little bit, although it's not easy to stretch the tongue out. Okay, but that's a lot of work. So I'm going to use a trick in here. It's called an IK spline. Okay, and this comes in really handy when you're rigging tongues. And here's how it works. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spline tool right here. Okay, and I'm going to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Okay. Now, the spline tool is actually set to this. If you look at the spline right now, it's set to be a Bezier thing, but I didn't drag out Bezier handles, so it's just sort of like linear, you know, if I move the points. So I'm going to change this from a Bezier spline to what's called a cubic spline. Cubic spline is useful because it doesn't have handles or anything. If you move one point, it kind of maintains the curvature of the line. Okay, see that? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to go to the snapping. Okay, I'm going to, in the snapping options, I'm going to take it off of point, I'm going to put it to axes. Okay, and then I'm going to take this point right here, and I'm going to start dragging it, and then I'm going to snap it to the axis of the bones. Okay, so now what's happening is I have 4 bones there, 5 joints, and there's a spline that goes right through it. And then on the first, and I'm going to put this also in the tongue thing, and also, by the way, in the joints, I'm not just going to call them joint 1, joint 2, I'm going to name them all tongue. And then I'm actually going to use what's called the naming tool. Okay, and I'm going to tell it to put I'm going to get rid of the replace, but I'm going to add a dash number sign n as a suffix to all of these names. And I'm going to hit replace name. And you can see that it automatically numbered them with numbers. Okay, so that's going to save me some time. So I don't have to go ahead and name them, right? So now, and I'll call this tongue spline. Tongue spline. So I've got the tongue spline and then the five joints. Okay. So on the first joint, I'm going of the spline, which is this joint right here. I'm going to go ahead to the rigging tags, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose a IK spline. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it, it's on this IK spline, it's going to ask me what is going to be the end of the IK spline. So I'm going to drag in the last joint in the chain. Okay, so now I've created an IK spline. So now automatically already I can actually go ahead on the spline. I can choose the spline. And already I can, like, for example, well, I can choose that on the spline. And you can see that what's happening is that, oh, nothing's happening. All right. Well, why is nothing happening? Because in the spline tag, I forgot it's asking me for the spline. And I never put the spline in there. Okay. So I'm going to take the spline. Okay. And I'm going to drag that in there. So you see the spline's in there now. Now, for example, if I drag the spline around, you'll notice that the thing is following it. Okay. But if I take the last point out and I drag it out, it actually doesn't want to go with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it from fit to relative. Okay. Now watch what happens. If I drag out the last one, it's stretching out. Okay. And if I go out to the second one, which is this one, no, it's this one. Well, okay, now you notice how it's hard to drag these things. It's hard to know where the spline is here. It's actually here. Okay, so what I can do here is I can go to the IK spline and I can switch to what are called the handles, and I can add 5 handles. So I go add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've added 5 handles. Okay, and then I'm going to create nulls at each of the handles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let me put this all in the tongue thing. So I've got these nulls and I've got the tongue spline and I got the thing. So now if I choose one of these nulls, okay, like I can choose this null, right? And I can move the thing up, whatever. So now the thing is that's useful. I'm not going to bother renaming this. However, what you might want to do is on each of these nulls, okay, you might want to say, I don't want them to be dots. I want them to be circles. And I want them to be on the Z. Okay, right now you've got these giant circles here. Okay, so they're too big. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change their aspect ratio down this way and make them smaller. Okay, so they fit the tongue better. See that? So now the thing is that now it makes it easy to constrain, but I haven't weighted it yet. So now let's weight it. Okay, so let's go to the tongue. It doesn't have a weighting tag on it yet. Okay, let me get rid of this constraint here. So I'm going to right click this and I'm going to choose rigging tags weight. Okay, and in the weighting tag, okay, I'm going to drag, let me lock that. Drag all these joints into that weighting tag. So now I can weight to them. Okay, and now what I could do is go back to the tongue. See, now they show up in the weighting manager. Okay, and now what I can do is I can go ahead and the tongue disappeared. Why? Why did the tongue disappear? Okay, I don't know why I can't see it in that view, but what I can do now is I can select these points right here. Okay, and I can weight that 100% to tongue 0. Okay, they get weighted 100%. And then I could weight these ring of weights, I could weight them between these two. So now they're 50% on each one of those, okay? And then I can do those two, choose these two, okay, 50% on those two, then choose these two, 50% on these, and then finally go on here. And then actually, you know what? I'm gonna put all these on the tip. Apply 100%. So now what happens is that I can go ahead and use these controllers now. We go to object mode, okay? And I can, I can, for example, if he needs to put his tongue up and out like this, whatever, I can take it way out here, okay? And I can just click on these other controllers, and I can just get exactly the kind of tongue motion that I want. So in the case of like, whatever you want to do. So for example, in the case of like this guy here, let's say, for example, I opened his mouth. This was rigged before, like that. Okay, now you see I have the controls, but I made them square on this one. It doesn't really matter, okay? So I can take this one now, and I can, take this, and if I want to have him make an L shape, I can, or if I want to have him take this and sort of bring his tongue out, I can do this kind of thing. Or now, is that tongue weighted to the jaw? I don't know if I ever weighted that tongue to the jaw. Yeah, it is. So, okay. I mean, so anyway, so that's how you would rig a tongue. All right. Now, I have a little bit of time left. So what I was going to show you, I was going to talk about the eye. And I was actually going to rig the eye for you to show you a way to rig the eye, but we're probably not going to have time for that. So I'm just going to go over how to rig the eye. Okay, so let me close all of this. Now, the thing is that, well, I'll start rigging the eye, and you can actually see what it looks like, see what I'm doing here. So let me close this back up. And you could model more geometry on the tongue if you wanted more control. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show now my head. Now, the way that it works is that if I were to go ahead and make a new joint, let's say, for example, I'll make a new joint, out here. Click 1, 2, right? And a new 2 joints. I created 2 joints. And where did I create them? Who the heck knows? I created them in here somewhere. That's weird. I don't want them there, so I'm just going to put them in the face ring. So the thing is that I'm going to call the outer one, I'm going to call it RI rotation. It look like RI rot. Okay, that doesn't sound very appetizing, eye rot, but that's what I'm going to call it, an eye rot tip. Okay, so now the thing is that I'm going to make this a child of the eye, and I'm going to zero out oh, here's something really important, by the way, is after you make your controls, practically on every control you make, you should go ahead and you should, on every single control you make, you should go ahead and you should go ahead and you should say freeze transformations. Okay, you should freeze all your transformations. Why? Okay, so the reason you should freeze your transformations is that if you have an object, it exists somewhere in space. These are its coordinates, okay? Let's say you're doing your merry thing, you're animating a whole thing with this guy. And, you know, his eye is somewhere up here, maybe his eye is somewhere over here somewhere. And then you're like, you know, I want to bring him back to his natural default state. So it's too late to undo it. You know, let's say you worked on it yesterday. So you're like figuring, okay, well, I can move it over here and I can, well, that looks about right, you know, but you don't know if that's right. Okay, you're guessing that that looks about right. It's a lot of work, right? So if you, in its default position, if you freeze transformations, it stores its position in space, but it makes where it is its 0 position. So later on, so you can close this. These numbers are safely stored, but you can close this. And let's say some other day, you know, you got this over here, and you're like, oh, I don't really know where it is anymore. I need to bring it back to a default position. You could just 0 out its position like this, and it comes back to what happened. Did I freeze or something? There it is, and it goes back to its default position. Okay, so that is an immense thing. This freeze transformation is an immense thing you should do when creating a face rig. That all in its default position, all of the controls, whether they're for the sneering area or whatever, they should all be zeroed out so you always know what to bring them back to. So, that's a good one. Maybe we should have iced coffee. So the thing is that so we got this thing over here, this eye this eye thing here. Where is it? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make it a child. Oh, there it is. It's a child of that, and we're going to zero it out inside of the eye because it's a child of it. It's going to put its position of this joint right in the center of the eye. Do you see that? And then on this joint, and also what I want to do also is I want to make sure that it's not why is it so weird actually? I think it's 180 on this. You go to 180. Oh, well, let me unlock this. Well, Y usually points up, so we'll go 180 on the Y. Okay, and then -90, because so it, oops, I mean 90, -90, so it points forward. And 0 on the rotation. So now we'll just bring this a little bit closer. So it's going to be something like that. So then, so we have this thing right in the center of the eye. So now let me bring this back now to in my face rig over here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is on the eye here, I'm going to tell it to, oh, we're running out of time here. I'm going to tell it, well, maybe we'll, okay, I'm going to tell it to rigging tags, constraint, give it a parent constraint, and we're going to tell this eye to be parented to the eye rotation. Okay, so now what we have is we have, if wherever we rotate this eye, okay, oops. I've got 2 here. Why do I have 2? Okay, yeah. So now what happens is that, you know, you have that bone will let you do the eye, okay? Now there's one thing, by the way, there's one thing. I would actually like to do an aim at constraint, but you know what, we're running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the finished eye, and I'm going to explain how it's done, okay? First of all, on this eye rotation here, okay, I have an aim at constraint, okay? And the aim at constraint, where is it? Okay, eye rotation here, eye. See, it has a little constraint called an aim constraint. And where is it aiming to? It's aiming to this thing. So wherever I move this thing, that eye is going to move, okay? But you'll notice something else here. So you notice that when I move it up, the eye, the eyebrow, the eyelid moves with it. Okay, and that's called, in rigging, it's called a fleshy eye. Because if you didn't have that, and if you move the eye up, it disappears behind the lid. Okay, then you have to actually move the lid. Okay, so this is a way to do this fleshy eye. Maybe I'll do a tutorial on this actually on later. Maybe we'll do it here or somewhere. Okay, we'll do a tutorial. But here's the thing. Here's how it's set up. There are these two eye aim things where you can move them around wherever you want to move them. Okay. And then they're parented to this object if you want to move them both at the same time. Okay, but if you want to make like a cross-eyed thing, okay, you could actually go ahead and move them like this. Okay, now he's like cross-eyed. Okay, so, but here the thing is that there's a little bit of tricky constraints with this fleshy eye thing, because what happens is that it's set up so that way when the eye moves up, the eyelid moves with it. It's called a fleshy eye. Not everybody has it. Some people just have the eye move up and then they move the eyebrow as they see fit. Now you might ask yourself, okay, but can I close the eyelid in this as well? And yes, I have another control here that I set up, which lets you close the eye. So for example, if you want to blink the eye or if you just want to close the eye like that, okay, we could do that. And now it still works as a fleshy eye, even with the eye closed partly or all the way. Okay, and it only works, you know, like that. So even if you move this around, it only goes up and down. So you have a separate thing that actually moves the blinking of the eye. And so now you know what a fleshy eye is. It's a very common thing. We'll have to do a follow-up on that one. But it's a very common thing when eye rigging is to do fleshy eyes. It saves you some work and saves you some time. So that's sort of an introduction to face rigging. So if we have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them. Maybe we'll put our cameras back on, Elly as well. And, you know, we can, whatever you think, you know, as far as if there's any questions, and
Yeah.
you can let me know, Elly.
Yeah, so we actually had one that came in earlier. Philip was wondering, could I constrain the vertices weighted to a spline to get a more smooth deformation?
Yes. There's some different things in the IK spline. You could fool around, for example, with right now we were doing relative. There's something called equal as well, and you can also you could create, like, for example, you know, a joint rig. You can actually weight. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can weight spline points to joints. So you can create a separate rig just for that tongue to, you know, rig it with, like, let's say IK or something like that. So there's a lot you can do, but the answer is yes.
Cool. So that was, do you know, that was the only remaining question, believe it or not. Everything else you've answered. So thank you for that. And I don't know if you're being inundated with lovely messages.
Oh,
So
really?
from
Yeah.
Bern, so yeah, incredible explanations and instruction to rigging. Bravo a million. From Marcelo, thanks very much. Joe, looking forward to the next ones. Drake, Joe, it's been a blast. Really glad to see you're expanding social media outreach. Great way to keep the knowledge flowing. And same for me. Oh, thanks, Drake.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, take care of yourself, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take a quick look here because that was as soon as we turn off it would just all disappear. So
It
thank
does.
you,
I can
Hannah.
find it again though, and I can always send it over to you. We're able to get all
Okay,
this
great. Yeah,
information.
yeah, send it over to me. I would love to read them later, and see what people say. So thank you very much,
Definitely.
everybody. And I'll we're going to do some more, I'm sure, here on the channel. Maybe we'll do the fleshy
Absolutely.
eye. I'm also going to do once in a while little things on my website, but small things. I think the big ones are going to be all here. And so keep an eye on that. And I will. I hope you guys, learned more about character animation. I want to thank you everybody for taking part in it and coming, and it's been great.
I want to
Thank you
thank
very
you,
much.
Joe. I mean, everyone's taken the words basically straight out of my mouth with how amazing this whole series has been. All the kind of the work and the effort, not only during these 6 weeks, but beforehand, planning, prepping everything. It really has been like an incredible workshop, and it's always a pleasure to be doing these things alongside you and to be learning along with everyone else on such a great topic. So honestly, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elly. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
ditto to what everyone has been saying. It's been
Yeah,
wonderful.
thank you. Thank you so much. And I see a bunch of people. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. Hey, Darren. Thanks, Darren. I appreciate that. Marcus, and from everybody around the world. Thank you all for coming. And thanks,
Yes,
Hannah.
and as Joe said, if you ever want to like continue the further learning, definitely get in touch on his YouTube. And also, this isn't going to be the last workshop we do, and
Yeah,
we do live shows pretty much every day now if you add the ZBrush team. So definitely check over all the different websites that we have and all the YouTube channels for all the goodness.
thank you so much.
Cool.
Well,
Well,
I
thanks
guess
again, everyone, and thanks again, Joe.
thank you. See you guys later. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one. See you soon.
Catch you on the next
Bye.
one.